To the brave who stayed and are hungry, there's 15 minutes where I want to take you back to the beginning, to the genesis of when Herzl was standing here. The question we're asking ourselves about technology and what it means politically, I think, is supercharged in this day and age. When Herzl was standing here 125 years ago, about 3 months before, Marconi introduced the radio. Right? That's why we don't have any recordings on radio of Herzl or anybody else giving speeches in the first Zionist Congress. Röntgen was coming, with his invention a couple of months later. So none of that existed. This is the magnitude of invention during Herzl's speeches in the first Jewish Congress. In the sixth Jewish Congress, less than 6 years later, when they debated the Uganda proposition, this is them here, it was also here in Switzerland. This was what happened, right? This is the magnitude of scientific invention, right? I mean, this is incredible. And to think of what we're looking at today, and I'm going to talk about it later. So, aviation. Ford Model T within a number of years gets created, right? This is the scale and magnitude of innovation during the years of Herzl. And then Einstein has his Annus Mirabilis in 1905 or 1906. It is incredible scale of innovation that's happening during Herzl's time. And this is Fritz Haber, ammonia. They were talking about soil. They were talking about soil and the value of soil and, ammonia being industrialized. He had solved for the Malthusian conquest. The whole question of can we produce enough food for an exponentially rising humanity was solved at that day and age. And if you kind of look forward, there's penicillin coming, right? All these great things happen in the course of 30 years from the beginning of the first Zionist Congress, at the end of which, we have Fritz Lang, we have cinema, and at the end, 1930, we have our first animated movie by Disney. It is, Mickey Mouse coming to the world. So over 30 years of magnificent innovation, magnificent technology. And I think this begs the question, 125 years later, we all like to think about our era as the most amazing era of innovation, the most amazing era of technology. Can we talk about the equivalent of the invention of penicillin or the invention of the airplane during our time? I'm not so sure. I mean, that's what a lot of us are doing. And here's what we had. I just kind of, for the sake of the presentation today, I went out and took the most viral videos from TikTok of 2022 so far. The year hasn't ended, so it might get more foolish. That's number one on TikTok. That's number two, the famous sheep that was dug out only to jump back into the hole. And this was number three. This is technology, right, in the 21st century, 125 years after the first Zionist Congress. But now, in all seriousness, is this what we have created after 125 years? Clearly, there's a lot more to it. So it begs the question, we're all very happy to say we live in the most innovative period in human history. Do we live in the most innovative period in human history? And I think, when you look at what SpaceX has been able to do, I think later today the Artemis mission is being launched again to the moon by NASA. So we are doing incredible things these days. We're landing, rockets that took satellites to space. And so there are three, I want to propose to everybody, in order to answer this question, I want to propose three conditions that can help us decide whether or not we live in the most innovative era in history. The first has to do with the magnitude of the technology. Landing a rocket after sending a satellite to space is a massive innovation. The second piece, if you think about, for instance, bioinformatics, the baseline of the COVID vaccine, I'm going to talk about it later, that is tremendously valuable innovation, leapfrogging tech. So we are seeing leapfrogging tech happening during our time. So yes, we are seeing that. The second question is, what is the cost of the technology? And I want to propose that as a critical piece for the era in which we live, because if technology breakthroughs happen, but they are still very, very expensive, it's as if they haven't happened for quite a while. When I used to work for President Shimon Peres as the CTO, the Chief Technology Officer for the country, I saw a lot of innovation happening in universities. People showed me batteries that would charge in a half a second and would have energy for like 3 days. But when you stop and think, the cost of manufacturing the materials for this battery were like $10 billion. So important innovation, but is it scalable? Can we do something with it? not so clear, and then ultimately time. When does this come to market? How far is it? I'm a fortunate founder and CEO of a company called Healthy.io. It took us 8 years to convince the FDA, that was last month, that to allow for a smartphone to test for urine at home, right? It takes time. So even if you have it cost effective and you have great tech, if it doesn't arrive to the consumer on time, it is not a meaningful technological change. In other words, when you think about, Wilbur and Orville Wright, it took 50 years from that airplane to get to this. This is the Pan Am 707 launch, right? So from getting to those massive innovations that served the rich and weren't really impactful until the 707 came out, until the jet engine came out. And it took another 50 years until it was cheap enough and affordable enough for everybody to fly. So we had meaningful innovation in 1903 that took 50 years to become scalable and took another 50 years to become affordable, right? So 100 years, when you think about those three factors. This is just from yesterday, from Geneva to the US at 500 euros in today's prices, which are pretty high in aviation. So it took about 100 years for a very meaningful tech to go through scale and then to go through price reduction. So I want to go back to the question, we're not yet in the most meaningful era of human innovation, but we're getting there. We entered an era of permanent revolution, and I'm borrowing here from Trotsky. The idea behind the permanent revolution is that somewhere in the next 15 years, because of a series of trends I'm going to show in the next few slides, we are actually going to be in a leapfrog from a technological perspective that's going to be very much like what Herzl didn't get to witness, but during that period of time was introduced to humanity. So what is the making of the permanent revolution? It is those three variables I showed you. So over the period of time, we must think about the scale of growth of tech. Is tech growing exponentially? And I'm going to show you quite a number of those. We've seen tech growing exponentially before Herzl's days saw them. The unique thing about this point in time historically is prices are going down exponentially, almost at the same time that technology is introduced. Think about, Wilbur and Orville Wright showing their airplane, and then 3 to 4 years later having $30, plane tickets from San Francisco to New York. That is the era in which we live in right now. Innovation is massive, scalable, and its price goes down almost simultaneously with the same pace of the technological innovation itself. That is a unique period in human history. We've never visited this before. It has massive ramifications on our public consciousness, on our political systems, on our socioeconomic systems, and political, I would say, hierarchies must reckon with that. We were here to listen to Michael's presentation this morning. The whole idea of covenantal economy is it needs a new covenant. We've never been here before as humanity. Our conscience was never at the point where tech is growing so fast and prices are going down at the same time. Just to give you a couple of anecdotes on why this is important. So battery technology, over time, in the last decade, a single battery cell in an electric car cost $1,200 to produce 10 years ago. Today, it's $130. By the end of the year, it will be $115. Why is that meaningful? Because when you think about this Tesla Model 3, the most affordable electric car, the most successful one, 10 years ago, the battery pack, 50 kilowatt hours, cost $60,000. Today, $6,000, right? Order of magnitude below. So it is very, very impactful when technology scales fast and price goes down. Because if it hadn't been to this price reduction, only a few people could afford Teslas or electric cars, and we wouldn't have had the revolution we had in the last 10 years. So that's just in battery technology. See how important it is when you get this revolution going. DNA sequencing, 12 to 15 years ago, cost $10,000 to decode a gene. Today, it's going towards $110. By the way, the company that does it is an Israeli company, an incredible company, getting to $100 gene sequencing. Why is that important? None of us, if somebody here in the room has either a Moderna or a Pfizer vaccine, none of that would have been made available if it hadn't been for this price reduction. It took humanity 42 days to sequence the RNA of COVID and get to the formula in the vaccine. 42 days. This is the first time in human history where nature throws an exponential problem at humanity, and humanity answers exponentially and cheaply. First time in history. Cloud computation, think about storage, $515 to store a gigabyte 15 years ago, today 2 cents. Right? And that's, the cloud computing. Everything we do at Healthy.io, other companies and entrepreneurs, we all rely on this. There's none of this impact innovation without this era of permanent revolution. And this is, dear to my heart. This is what we saw 10 years ago. This is what Michael believed in when he invested at Healthy.io and Idan and our partners. The smartphone camera revolution. Guys, we went on a factor of 100 in less than a decade for the same price. We buy the phone for roughly the same price. We have 100x computation, 100x battery storage, 100x quality in the camera. And you saw the selfies and you saw the funny stuff from TikTok, but you can also leverage that for healthcare and other uses. So we've done a lot of that. So these are just a couple of examples of how unique our era is and how much of a challenge it puts in front of everybody who's dealing with decision-making these days. To summarize this in one slide, it has never been cheaper to create a global and sustainable disruption, ever in human history. It's never been cheaper. And the cheaper piece is very, very important. That's part of the story of what we're seeing in modern history. So there are 6 things to consider as impact-led, I would say, leaders here in the room that I want to kind of leave behind, because these are all going to change dramatically at the end of permanent revolution within the next 15 years. Energy abundance. In the next 15 years, we're going to see a form factor reduction in batteries. It will not require a Nobel Prize winning type technology. We will see it by the form of what we saw right now, which would create a solution to the storage challenge of alternative energies. There will have to be, and Michael, I did not coordinate it with you, there will have to be a new social contract. What we have in place right now doesn't work, right? The challenge on the systems, there has to be greater distribution that would create a new trust in systems, right? Distributed capital is going to be part of what's going to happen. Everybody's talking Web3. I don't know what name we're going to add to it, but definitely that's something that's going to happen. In human longevity, healthcare is going to radically change. It already is. I don't think we understand. We kind of take it for granted, that vaccine that we had for COVID. And I wrote 6, and I leave another bullet for each and every person here in the room to think, what is the thing that you're busy with that's going to happen, that's going to be powered by this permanent revolution, the reduction in price and the exponential increase in tech power. So with the last minute, what I want to leave you with is a hope. So we saw time factor. From the first Jewish Congress, Zionist Congress, to the Declaration of the State of Israel, we had to go through this. And we had to go through 2 world wars, tens of millions of people dead, right? We are now going through this in order to get there. Is that a necessity, right? Is it possible for us as humanity, with an elevated conscience, given everything that we have, to get to the end station or get closer there without the tragedies in the middle? I'm not sure it's possible. That's one thing I want to leave with everybody here dealing with, challenges of leadership in this day and age. And, must we go through this in Ukraine for those people to end up sitting together and come at a resolution? And the hope I want to leave with you is, I feel that we can. My wife is here, Maureen, these are our 4 children. I think we owe it to them as leaders. We owe it to them as people at the forefront of change to do the best we can to get to the other side, to get to longevity, to get to the impact on better government, to sign the new social contract without going through the tragedy in the middle. So with that, I would leave you, and I hope that this is a hopeful message to conclude the 2 days we had. And I'll see you out there. I think we're having lunch finally. So thank you, everybody.